Hello and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are streaming live from the Team Needham Abode podcast studio, and we are super excited to have Christian Elliot on our podcast today. He's been talking about the unbreakable human spirit, and we may even talk about some other things too. He has a successful coaching business along with his wife, Nina, health coaching business. And he's been doing this for over 20 years. And I am super excited to have him on to help us realize our goal of this podcast, which has always been and still is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So, Christian, welcome to our show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your history of coaching with your wife and how you got to be on this podcast.
Sure. Well, so back in 2003, I just graduated from grad school and had the need to really double down and focus on my health because I had burned the candle at two ends for way too long. My health was not great. My joints were degenerating. I was sick frequently. And I had to really rethink, geez, if I fast forward this to when I'm 50, what is this going to look like? And so it really was a chance to step back and say, what do I not know? I had the good fortune to meet a chiropractor after going to half a dozen different medical professionals who could not help me. And he just put me back together. He taught me nutrition. He taught me how the biomechanics of the body works. He helped me learn a healing paradigm. And in the process, taught me about the pharmaceutical industry, the farming industries. And it just became several red pills at once. But it took me about 2 years to get my health back. And that became I got diverted from what I thought I was going to be doing into the realm of health. And it was kind of a hobby. And then it turned into something people would pay me for and little workshops I ran. And then we introduced fitness to it. And that became really a viable business at that point. And we transitioned into running our own studio. So for about 9 years, we had brick and mortar locations where we integrated a team of wellness professionals. But once I realized the medical profession didn't have all the answers and I found other healing modalities or disciplines, I became a kid in a candy store. I wanted to find out all the different ways that I did not know the body could heal and the professions that helped the body do that. So we integrated chiropractic and acupuncture, massage, and naturopathy, and nutrition and fitness. And we had all that in one place. And it really became fun because we could look at any given person from a holistic perspective and say, what do they really need? And so over the years, we've just been kind of growing more and more in that. And in 2017, we transitioned to a virtual business. And that's really where we kind of started going more in the life coaching realm and in the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual realm, trying to help look at the whole human, look at the whole person and figure out what does it take to get this individual well? And we haven't really been able to break up with a holistic perspective because it's the only way that we find we can get traction. It doesn't matter really where someone's stuck. There are basic underpinnings of human physiology and human nature that aren't going to change. And once you get good at assessing that, it's much easier to find, oh, this is where this person's stuck. And so that's the work we do today. We love it. We're just a virtual business and had the good fortune recently to I started a podcast and I got to meet a lot of different amazing doctors, some of whom I found to be unicorns in their profession. They think differently. And one of them being Dr. Heather Gessling. And so her and I have kind of partnered really in the detox realm, which started around the COVID vaccine and the idea of like really helping deal with some of the downstream problems that have come from that. And a lot of people that have been injured or have lingering impacts. And so we tried to put our heads together what we could do there. And we realized that what works to help people heal from that is not like it only helps with that. There's healing and detoxification are more timeless principles. And so we have worked to grow into a new venture we're calling Healing United, which is really just medical, alternative, and coaching worlds combining their forces to humbly look at this and bring different skill sets to the puzzle, helping the person, whether it's the shot or it's just ongoing toxicity or it's just a lifestyle that's been in the way for a really long time, helping them see their way through that. And then that's kind of gets you up to speed of where we are today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, speaking of physicians that are different and just have a different mindset, Dr. Heather Gessling, we've had the pleasure of meeting her, interviewing her on our podcast. And it is reassuring to meet physicians like her that just step out of the box and do something different. And, I can tell you kind of talk a little bit about, just very, very briefly about your chiropractor educating you on big pharma and things. And I will tell you, as Janet and I being two pharmacists, I mean, we have lost faith in pharma, specifically, even more so during COVID, but we haven't trusted them for years. We have really questioned them for years. And to think that our bodies need a drug to, be healthy is just incredible. But that's exactly what Big Pharma wants to believe.
Yeah, well, it comes from you rewind the history of where we got there, really go back to the Rockefellers and Carnegies and the Flexner Report of 1910, and understanding there was a monopolistic intent behind it. There was a need to create a pill for every ill, or to take what worked really well for Rockefeller in creating Standard Oil. The standardization of oil was where he made his money, because then people could have predictability when it came to running their engines. Well, he applied the same logic to human physiology. We can have a pill, we can have a standardization of chemical intervention in the body, and that became the quote unquote scientific way to approach it. And they kind of poo-pooed everything that couldn't fit into the reductionist, scientific, petroleum-based pill for every ill. And it zoomed in dramatically on biochemistry to the exclusion of bioelectricity and magnetism and heat and light and movement and all the other aspects of biophysics. And it became a monopolistic centralization. You even look at the history of medical licensing going back in the late 1800s and how that became another way to just corral independent thinkers, or to tell people what they were and were not allowed to say. And you put that with a monopolistic attempt to create medicines and grow that over time. It's birthed what we have today. And it's taken a while for that kind of residue of that, I call it enlightenment goo, the idea that we can zoom in and keep going down and down and finding more specific interventions that will somehow magically change the whole. It takes a while to break up with that. Sounds like you guys have been in that and realized, there's more to health than just biochemical whack-a-mole. There's a hubris to that. There's an idea that the body needs its battles fought for it, rather than saying, what does the body need? And it's smarter than we ever could be. Let it do its own thing. Let it be the one that creates the healing. And how do we just become stewards of that and operate from a healing paradigm? And that's really where Dr. Gessling and I have found so much common ground, is looking at the body through a healing paradigm. And even to your point, all of you sounds like have kind of not let your education get in the way of learning, and been humble to say, there's some things here we did not understand. And now that we step back and look at the history of this, now that we look at the model, the method, the theory behind this, we might have missed something. And maybe there is something to participating in healing. And to the point of your show is helping people take back their agency and realize they're not just at the whims of whatever their doctor says, but they can actually think and ask questions and develop their own intuition. And so it's been a fun journey for me as a health coach. I kind of came at it from the other end, but even the coaching world or the alternative world is largely stuck in a reactionary mindset. It's not like the medical community is the only one that has it. We instead of a bottle with a brown bottle and a white cap, we just give people a suitcase full of supplements and tell them to hope for the best. And that's not doing anything any better. There's more to healing than what we can swallow. And once that clicks, it's so much more fun to step back, to be humble and say, are we doing the basics well? Like, are you drinking water? Are you lonely? Are you hungry? When was the last time you ate a good meal? Do you even understand nutrition? Are you moving? What's your stress level? What are the negative things your inner critic is saying to you? And truthfully, the healing comes more from those things anyway than from some magic pill that we swallow. Once that clicks, then it really becomes on us as the people. We don't even think of ourselves as healers anymore. We're just teachers. We're teaching people what it takes and grounding them in the first principles of health. And that means there's sometimes lifestyle disentangle and other things that have to be thought of in the effort to get well. But once it clicks that that's the business we're in and that's the role that we have as stewards of our knowledge, it's so much easier to figure out, okay, well, this is how we're going to help. And we get to teach people more and more the fundamentals of how the body heals, how it cleans itself out, and just then apply patience and time. So that's really, I guess, an affirmation of what you've lived through. And it's nice to meet other people who are in the same fight.
Janet, what comments or questions do you have for Christian?
Well, it seems like, I I think we end up getting the clients that just aren't accepting, for example, the solution that they've been sold.
Mm-hmm.
They've stepped out of that blind faith, and
Yeah.
I don't know how they got there. Maybe they were too uncomfortable to stay in that other paradigm for the rest of their life. But kind of tell me how people find you and how you think they got to you, because I think there's always a journey on there that people end up in our realm and how we end up helping them.
Yeah, I think my experience is that I didn't set out for it to be this way, but we've tended to collect the people who've gotten to the end of what I call the medical or alternative merry-go-round. They've kind of run the gamut of the, poison your body back to health in the medical world, or that when your body parts break down, then we can cut them out and throw them in the trash, and you can poop in a bag the rest of your life. Or we can medicate you when you're missing your thyroid. We can take out your gallbladder. We can shrink your stomach. And at some point the gravity of that hits them, and so they shift to the alternative realm, looking for people that can help. And that's my comment earlier. They just typically end up with one specialist who I've renamed partialists. Like they're people who look at a part of the problem, and the more specialized they get, the more they lose the big picture. And so they kind of go through, maybe it's this way of eating, maybe it's this particular discipline, and maybe I can supplement my way back to health. And when that finally doesn't work, then they're typically ready. And I think we share a similar demographic in terms of the people who are finally ready to look at this more holistically. My sweet spot is kind of the 60-ish plus or minus female who's finally ready to say, you know what? I only have so many tries left, and I don't want to get it wrong anymore. I've contributed to this problem, and what I have been doing, if I'm honest, doesn't actually help. I haven't healed. And so there's a soil that's ready to plant new seeds in, that's ready to approach this differently. So often it's a human tendency, right? We are a creature who doesn't like to change unless we have to. We typically change for inspiration or desperation. And most of the people I think in the health realm are in the desperation. They're just like, I got to try something else because this isn't working. But once we realize that we have to do it, there's an extreme ownership that kicks in. And sometimes we still find people that are like, just tell me there's probably this one pill I haven't thought up to swallow yet. There's this one, if I just find this one healing modality, and it's kind of kindly letting them know that there's more to it than that, but it's okay. And we're going to walk you through the healing journey. We're going to look at this a little more broadly. And when you can make accessible the fundamentals of health, of good water and how to eat well and how to move your body, and recognize that the biggest block you have might be a mental emotional puzzle. It might be that your bully from childhood, your narcissistic parent, or your sibling that you're estranged from. Sometimes those are the biggest reasons why you're having a hard time healing. And there's just in that, kind of back half of life, the legacy phase, where we become much more retrospective, where we look forward and we're like, you know what? I don't have forever. I think this show ends. And so maybe I need to rethink this. I think anybody in that headspace is primed for a breakthrough if they're willing to just take some ownership, be brutally honest with themselves, and say, okay, this may take a little bit longer than I thought, but I plan on being around for longer than another year or two. So what would it look like to move into a lifestyle, to move into a healing paradigm, to make sure I don't miss out on the adventures with the grandkids, that I'm not watching life from the sidelines and limping through the last few decades of life. I want to finish strong. There's something that clicks once you hit 50 or 60, or depending on the person. Sometimes it's earlier if you've tried a lot of things, but that's, I guess, my lived experience of the people who have come to us and what's going on in their head when they're trying to get well.
And so we titled this The Unbreakable Human Spirit. So tell us how that fits into this picture.
Well, the humans are funny, and we're predictable, and we're predictably irrational at times. And we can humorously look at that and say, yeah, you're kind of special, just like the rest of us. And there's something about your lived experience or what you're trying to accomplish in life that once you kind of have a better map of reality, and you see that humans, I've had the good fortune to coach people in every decade of life from, before 10 up into the 90s. And one thing I can tell you is that every human wants to feel like life is moving forward. We want to feel like we're progressing, like we're getting somewhere. Like if we just look back at recent weeks, we can have some evidence of progress. And that longing never leaves us. It is always part of being human. And even in the most depressed funks, there's this like glimmer of like, I want it to get better. And that's essentially what we're talking about. That is the part of the human spirit that isn't quenchable. And it flies in the face of the so-called Great Reset, where they say, we're going to take all of your stuff and you're going to like it. Essentially, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. No, we're not. There's a kernel of the longing to own something, and pride of ownership, of wanting to say, I made this and I want to sell it. I want to see if people like it. Or we're just creative by nature, and that can't be rooted out of the human spirit. But when it's allowed to flourish, or when it feels like it has a believable outlet, and often that's a frame of reference of somebody kind of like us, which is another reason we need community so much. But when we feel like we have an outlet, there's this drive that comes in us, and we want to make things. And humans, we've survived every rough patch of history, and we are still here, and there are more of us than ever. And that's a testament to that human nature that longs for growth, that longs for purpose, that longs for the ability to go to work at something and believe we have a chance to influence the outcome. And when that just gets a little bit of oxygen, when that gets a path forward, it's easier to go to work on the thing today because, I know why I'm doing this again. And we're not stuck in a past that pulls us back too much. We just need some people around us to believe in us enough to sometimes pull us up when we don't have the strength to pull ourselves up. But that cannot be rooted out of the human condition. And the more that we can fan the flames of that, or recognize that, you know what, if I'm honest with myself, I really do want this to get better, even in the worst of situations. Sure enough, we find the underpinnings of the motivation we need, and we don't always have to act from desperation. There's a will to try. There's even a defiance to say, you will not break me, and I will find a way to get through this. And who of us couldn't use a little more of that sometimes? Gritty is sometimes the best way to move life forward. And we become scrappy when we think there's a chance that we could influence the outcome and defy the ones who want to take away our autonomy. So there's much more I could say about that, but that's a short answer to your question.
There's a lot. My mind is going like this with questions because there's so much to unpack. And I was just going to say autonomy. So a couple of things, and it's still on topic, maybe a little bit off topic, but first of all, I like what you said about property. I don't remember if you mentioned property, but humans owning something and being able to take ownership in something is very important. I believe private property rights is a fundamental human right. It's one of the things that is a right, I believe, and
life, liberty, and property, right?
Yeah, right. Our private property. That means things we own. That means our own body. That means And when somebody takes that away, i.e., a government entity is usually the only people that can take that away. It is demoralizing to the human spirit. And I think we found that out during COVID when our private property rights were taken away by where we could travel, by what we could put in our bodies, by, having to wear masks, things like that. Those are all, in my opinion, human rights that we should have a right to our own property. And autonomy, the same way. And I think what I like about what you said, because this is one thing that Jan and I say all the time, is we do not believe in the traditional role or the traditional idea of retirement.
Right.
And, if you look back, Christian, about the history of retirement, that word never even was talked about until a little over 100 years ago. During the progressive era, the 1880s or so, it started in the European countries, and it came over to the United States in the 1900s. And then we had Social Security. So the government can steal our money, i.e. taxes, and take it to save for us so we can retire. Well, none of that. Social is Social Security is not security, for one. And it's the biggest Ponzi scheme ever. And really what it does is it just takes the productivity out of a human. How many humans do you know that say, I can't wait till I'm 65 so I can retire? Well, who made up this magic number of 65? The government.
You know where it came from?
I don't know. Tell me.
Well, the average lifespan of somebody when they created Social Security was 63. So
I thought it was 58.
Or less. Like it was less than what they put the number at.
Right, so, which makes you wonder, did they ever want anybody to draw Social Security?
No. Right. It was just, to your point, it's theft. And it's this illusion. Like if you can scratch and claw and outlive most people, then we might pay a little bit after we take your life savings, or we pigeonhole you into this little living at the poverty line so that you can continue to scratch and claw if you make it that far. Like once you understand the systems that were developed, and we what the people in power have over us sometimes is they have two major things. They have the ability to think generationally, and they have a systems level of thinking. And they think on how can we create a system that meets our objectives and gradually implement this. And Social Security is just one example of that.
Yeah. And one thing I like about what you said is that, you think humans should, from what you've found from your coaching business, is that humans like to progress. Mm-hmm. Well, if you just retire and sit on the couch and do nothing, that's not progression. And no. I believe that we should, when you look at historically, people retired when they died.
Right.
I mean, seriously. And I mean, if you do something you love and, you never work another day in your life. And Jan and I say we're never really going to retire because we love what we do.
Yeah. Well, you might shift to what you do. You might change the hours you work at it and adjust for aging or other aspirations to hit you. But you, like to your point, you die when you stop working. It's kind of, if you look at the actuary tables of people who finish their whatever career they're in, and then they kind of just fall off a cliff. They just flounder for the next few years because they have no purpose. They don't have anywhere to aim themselves. And they hustled so much to get to that point, but they didn't give much thought to what comes after it. That becomes a steep decline, and it doesn't need to be that way. So just kind of breaking up with the retirement mindset to begin with, and always having goals, and just having the mindset that I'm going to work at something, and when it's my time, when the use by date is up for this body, I'm just going to hand off what I was working on to someone else and let them have a turn with it. But that mindset really does get in the way of health, of healing, of progress, of any number of things. And I'm happy to hear that you pointed it out.
Well, we have seen that happen more than once in many clients that, they hit that retirement and they're so excited for it. And then it seems like it doesn't take long for that progression of illness to come in, and they accepted it. They well, that's just the way it goes because I'm retired and I'm at that age. But yet we still had those clients that, at 90 some years old, we're still living and choosing that as well. And I think we're hitting on something that I think that works well for what you do is that, you have to have a belief.
Yeah.
You have to have something to hold on to say, hey, this is not the way I'm going to go down. This is not the way I'm going to live my life. I just can't quite, there's that silver lining. I can't quite accept what you're telling me that after I retire, that this is over. There's nothing more enjoyable anymore.
Yeah. Like if you have the view that your best years are behind you, what are you getting up for? And you're just managing decline at that point. It's not near as fun of a way to go through life. But when there's a new horizon, and sometimes it helps okay, how many 5 years do I have left? You can think of it in terms of a bigger project that you want to work on. But sometimes it's watching the grandkids grow or finding an injustice that really bothers you and saying, okay, well, what would it take to make a dent in that? Where could I contribute my life force to making that less of a problem? And sometimes that means, I think there's some of us that need to go on the systems level and think and figure out where some of these downstream problems are coming from. But for some people, that's cleaning up the downstream problems of widows and orphans and teen pregnancy or whatever the problems are. Somebody needs to focus on those. But there's an endless supply of them. And it can't be that you're not interested in any of them and none of them bother you. So that, to your point, if you just retire and then you go play bridge and sit on the beach and you eventually just feel like you're taking up space and you're just kind of a resource hog. And nobody likes to feel like that. We don't like to feel like a leech or a louse than somebody that's really not contributing. Your motivation comes back when you find a place where you are contributing. And that can just be mattering to a grandkid. That could be enough, but it's some reason to keep going. And if you're having a hard time turning the engine, that might be the mirror to look into. Like, oh, this is where I'm lacking. I don't have any purpose. I don't even know what to aim myself at. And often the society tells us that because you can't move at the speed of business anymore, therefore we don't need you. And it makes you feel like there's no place to contribute. Well, defy that. So, no, maybe I'll make a difference in some other arena, but I'll go make a difference at my pace and I'll do it in the way that I want to do it. So sometimes that means you have to get a job and you're a greeter at Walmart, or sometimes that means you're out there innovating and using the life savings you built to go invest in something and knowing that you really can't take any of it with you. So why not put it to work on something? And if you can start to think generationally, it does so much more. If you can think systems level, there's no shortage of new systems that are needed to replace the ones that are currently centralizing and enslaving us. And go have fun. Like, what problem do you want to solve? And once you're in that headspace, life's so much more fun because you see purpose everywhere you look.
Yeah, that is so true. I tell you, man, we could go on for hours about this. We really, have a lot of common links there. And I'm not surprised that, Dr. Gesling put us in touch with you, because we definitely think the same. Speaking of being productive, is that, and aging. I was at the in Australia a few weeks ago. I went to the mountain bike world masters championship. Nice. I was racing there, and there was a guy that stood on the podium. He was the only guy in his age group. He was 80 plus years old. That's all I know. And wow. He was racing a mountain bike. Which is just, that is so inspiring. Right. And there's people that are my age, 50, 52, 53, and they basically think their life is over and they can't do sports like that. It's like, sure, you can. Mm-hmm. It's all in the mindset. Yeah.
Well, and if your mindset is you have a patience for the healing process or for the progression process. And unfortunately, we live in a society that shows us or markets to us all the outlier stories of so-and-so got in shape in 3 months and you can do the same. And we see these people who were at the precipice. They just needed one more thing to nudge them into a healing world. And most of the time, it takes a little bit longer. So I like to say I'm not anti-aging. I'm pro-aging gracefully. It's going to happen. I can't make it stop. So how do I do this well? And that means I get to curate a list of habits that will keep me active and functional and protect the asset, to borrow a phrase from Greg McEwen. I am the asset, and I have to work to protect it with how I manage my time and my stress and the habits that I have. And it's totally possible to go mountain biking in your 80s because you just saw it happen. So then the questions become, well, how is that possible? What does that person go through? And what kind of lifestyle did they live, rather than what pill did they swallow and what biohack did they use in order to be able to do that? And there's so many things that come together. But first, you got to have the mindset. You got to have a will. You got to have a spirit that can't be broken before you can even get to those things. So yeah, I'm thrilled that you had that frame of reference of like, dang, like, I guess I got to level up. If that guy's doing it in his 80s, right. I got something to shoot for, right?
Well, and even at that, there was a guy in the 70 plus class. I actually pre-rode with him on the course before the race a few days before, and he beat me. He was a former professional, and he beat me, and he's in his 70s. That is inspiring.
Right.
Well, I think, one of the things that I hear a lot with patients is sometimes we don't give ourselves permission. Like we hold ourselves back, and a lot of that needs to be unpacked. And I think that's where somebody like yourself comes in, is that you're unpacking these thoughts and these habits and these things that we've learned. Mm-hmm. So we have permission to get past what we have put upon ourselves. Is what I had a lady that cuts my hair, and she went through a divorce. And afterwards, one of the things she said to me is, I learned in life that I'm holding myself back more so than anybody else.
Yeah.
I thought it was, my former spouse. I thought it was this or that. But then when the reality hit, it's a lot of times taking ownership of the fact that, hey, either I'm the person that says I can or I cannot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably, to your point, you picked right up on it. The thing I spend the most of my time on as a coach is looking for, I've become a quick study at finding the limiting beliefs people have when they frame reality through a binary. One of the best ways to find it is when you use the word can't, don't, always, every, never. Anytime you're using those phrases, you've lost nuance in your thinking and you've painted yourself into a corner where you can't change or where reality is fixed and there's nothing that can be done about it. And as soon as the penny drops that, wait, that would be evidence of a limiting belief. Rather than saying, I'm not a morning person, I'm bad at names or silly things like that. He's like, well, historically, I've had a challenge getting up earlier in the morning, or, I could work at finding better ways to remember people's names. You lose the I never can do that. Everybody else always does this. And every time I do it, it goes that way. Stop it. Think harder. There's a way out of that. And once for your person you just mentioned, it finally clicked like, wait a minute. I was telling myself a story and that was a crappy story. There's a different way here. And I just hadn't seen it before because I was stuck in the rut of thinking a particular way. And once you're willing to break up with that, or you replace kind of this fixed thinking with two majorly important virtues, humility and curiosity. Wait a minute, I don't know everything. And so I wonder if, maybe I'd run the thought experiment. There's no penalty for it. Maybe there's a way I could get in shape and do a mountain bike race in my 80s. Maybe there's a way I could lose the weight, or maybe the body does know how to heal and it's just going to take a little bit longer. And I wonder what it would take to find that. Once those thoughts click, it's so much easier. And you realize, geesh, I've been stuck in this limited thinking for decades. It's so much fun to break up with that, because what you see, instead of this, dark cloud of possibilities, you just see vistas of too many things that you actually have to get choosy. Like, gosh, I could accomplish any of that. So what do I want to do? And finding what really lights your fire. I've taken so many classes. I took one recently from ready to end his life, like literally planning where he was going to kill himself so his family didn't have to clean up the mess, to more purpose than he can possibly ever get to. There's so many places he wants to make a difference, and now we have to choose. You're not going to be able to do all. You need 10 lifetimes to do all that. So let's get specific. And what can you peacefully go, you know what? I can save that for now. For now, we'll focus on this one. There's you can't do all of it. And it's so much more fun to operate from a perspective of what do you really get juiced by and what do you want to leave behind? And how do you want to spend your days? What does a really, really good average day look like? And spending a little bit of time thinking about that is so rewarding. Most people spend more time planning their vacation than they do their life. And when you flip that, and life feels like the thing you're excited to be showing up for, so much easier, so much more energizing to wake up and go, you know what? I got hope, I got purpose, and my tail's wagging. Let's get to the day. That's a much more fun way to go through life.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, in the traditional medical profession, we don't have doctors telling people that. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jen and I hear over and over again, well, that's just a part of getting older. Their doctors will tell them that. We hear that about all kinds of stuff. Oh, yeah. Well, as you get older, you just get high blood pressure. You just have XYZ disease and you just need this drug. It's just part of getting older. Or, as you get older, sex is as important. So, don't worry about it that you don't have any libido or you don't feel like having sex. That's just part of getting older. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's hard for people to, they usually trust doctors, and it's hard for them to get out of that mindset. And we used to hear all the time, and I think it came from the medical profession a lot, is that, oh yeah, when you get in your 50s, it's just kind of all downhill from there. And it's like, I mean, we've seen people thrive in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. The mountain bike racer in his 80s.
Yeah. Right. Well, and once you can break up with that idea that you're just stuck, you go to most medical doctors, why is this happening? It's genetics, it's stress, it's aging, or I don't know. Those are the totally unsatisfactory answers you get when you ask a doctor where these problems are coming from. And all you've done is just run into the limits of their knowledge. You've run into their ability to help. Right. And once that clicks, okay, you just don't know. That doesn't mean there isn't an answer. You just weren't trained to look for it. And instead you're indoctrinated sounds strong, but you're indoctrinated to teach people that it's genetic stress, aging, and we just test you until we find something we can bill your insurance for, and we treat you with a pill or a surgery. And yeah, it kind of stinks to get old, and so we'll just help you limp through it and break up with that. Like, no, thank you. There are so many more powerful ways to heal, but you got to have that vigor in you first to want to. Otherwise, you're just kind of like, well, this is what the doctor said, and you didn't know you could question that. They're not gods. They didn't come down from heaven to bestow truth to us. Science is just a tool. It's not some sort of thing we're supposed to worship. It's just it's a servant if we use it well. And it's always limited by the people using it and what they could even think of, or the measurements of, or the units they have to measure things. So it's just it's one little tiny sliver of all the different things that we could look at to give you a sense of where to go with life and what makes it meaningful and how to get there. So yes, you are definitely over the target in what you guys are doing. I love it.
So as we wind this podcast up, Christian, tell us what you have a passion for.
Oh man, so many things. I guess that's not a great question to wind up. Too many things. I've got 6 kids. We homeschool them. We love teaching them how the world actually works. I have work that fills me with purpose every day, and I see people stuck in these limiting beliefs, and it is an injustice to watch them wilt way prematurely. They don't need to go through that, and I love pulling people out of that head funk. I love showing people how much simpler healing can be. If you're sick, you're toxic, you're malnourished, or you have toxic thinking. Those are the 3 things that poison you. And once it clicks that that's what your problem is, that simplifies the path. It doesn't necessarily mean easy, but yeah, so that's just the short list of things I get fired up about and would love to be making a difference. And to your point, I can't imagine retiring. I'm planning to squeeze at least a century out of this body, finding and solving new problems the whole way through, and just leaving a littered legacy of all the different stories I've changed, but to hopefully codify it, or to give it a record of, here's some wrong turns I can spare you. Here's some breadcrumbs to better principles. And so I will probably be doing that the rest of my life. So that's my short list.
I love it. So tell us about your website with Dr. Gasling.
Yeah, it's called Healing United. We picked the URL healingunited.today because we wanted a sense of urgency. Let's get on with it already. There's healing to be done, and you have purpose and a reason that you are here. And so we've really honed in on detoxification and a healing paradigm. So it's getting the stuff out of us. Most people don't understand how toxic we are, and that there's over 80,000 chemicals that have been birthed in the last 100 plus years. And the average body burden is hundreds, if not thousands, of chemicals that interact with each other and gunk up all of our engines. And so if we can get that body burden reduced and we can get the purging systems working, we can nourish the body deeply, you can heal just about anything. So that's really what we've done. We've created a free 2-day workshop. We've got 5-minute videos you can watch to help learn about detoxification. But we just go out trying to build a lot of goodwill. So we've put our different backgrounds together into a 2-day event that really just helps people see what has previously eluded them about how to clean their body out and how to heal. So you can find that at healingunited.today.
I love it. We could go on and on. We should have you on again sometime. And there's so many subjects we could talk about, from health to how we got here as a country, with the pharmaceutical industry and how it's controlled doctors and controlled medicine.
Yeah. Well, it would be an honor to come back. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being on, and you helped us realize our goal, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So thank you very much for what you do, Christian.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune into our midweek podcast, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time this Thursday. I don't even know who the guest is or what the topic is, but it's going to be good. Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Thank you.